A son worked 12 hours a day to support his disabled mother who couldn't leave the house. One day, he saw her entering a five-star hotel wearing luxury clothes. Ryan trudged up the creaky stairs of the old apartment building, his shoulders sagging under the weight of exhaustion. The flickering, fluorescent lights in the hallway cast an eerie glow on the peeling wallpaper. He fumbled with his keys, the jingling echoing in the quiet corridor. As he opened the door to apartment 3B, a warm voice called out from inside. "Ryan, honey? Is that you?" "Yeah, Mom, I'm home," he replied, his voice hoarse from a long day of customer service calls. Ryan stepped into the small living room, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. The air was heavy with the scent of lavender air freshener, masking the musty odor of the aging building. His mother, Monica, sat in her wheelchair by the window, a crocheted blanket draped over her legs. Her face lit up as she saw him, crow's feet crinkling at the corners of her eyes. "How was your day, sweetie?" she asked, wheeling herself towards him. Ryan managed a tired smile. Same old, same old. How about you? Did you need anything while I was gone?" Monica shook her head, her graying hair swaying gently. No, I'm fine. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door stopped by with some soup. Such a kind lady." Ryan nodded, grateful for their neighbor's occasional help. He moved to the kitchenette, opening the fridge to survey its meager contents. "I'll go grocery shopping tomorrow after work," he said, more to himself than to his mother. "Ryan," Monica's voice was soft, tinged with concern. "You work too hard. You're only 24. You should be out with friends, enjoying life." He turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "Mom, we've talked about this. I'm fine. Really. I don't mind working." But even as he said the words, Ryan felt the familiar twinge of longing. He thought about his high school friends, now in college or starting careers, while he spent his days in a cramped call center cubicle and his nights caring for his mother. Monica wheeled closer, reaching out to take his hand. "I just worry about you, honey. You've given up so much for me." Ryan squeezed her hand, noticing how frail it felt in his. "You're my mom. You've always been there for me. Now it's my turn." He thought back to his childhood, before the accident that left Monica paralyzed from the waist down. She had been a whirlwind of energy then, working 2 jobs to support them, yet always finding time to attend his Little League games or help with homework. The memory of her cheering from the bleachers, her voice carrying over the crowd, brought a lump to his throat. "I'm going to take a quick shower," Ryan said, gently pulling his hand away. "Then I'll heat up some of Mrs. Rodriguez's soup for us." In the bathroom, Ryan let the hot water wash over him, trying to rinse away the day's stress. He closed his eyes, allowing himself a moment of weakness as tears mingled with the shower spray. He thought about the life he could have had, college, friends, maybe even a girlfriend. But then he pictured his mother, alone in this tiny apartment, and he knew he'd made the right choice. After dinner, Ryan helped Monica into bed, making sure she was comfortable before retreating to the living room couch that doubled as his bed. He pulled out his laptop, squinting at the screen as he searched for online classes. Maybe he could take a few courses, work towards a better job. But as he scrolled through the options, fatigue overtook him, and he drifted off to sleep, the glow of the screen illuminating his tired face. In the quiet of the night, Monica lay awake in her room, listening to Ryan's soft snores from the living room. A mix of love and guilt washed over her. She reached for her phone on the nightstand, hesitating for a moment before typing out a message. The blue light of the screen reflected in her eyes, which were filled with a determination that belied her frail appearance. She hit send, then quickly deleted the message from her phone. As she set the device back down, Monica whispered into the darkness, "I'm sorry, Ryan. One day, you'll understand." The next morning, Ryan woke to the sound of his alarm blaring. He groaned, fumbling for his phone on the coffee table. The couch springs creaked as he sat up, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. Sunlight filtered through the threadbare curtains, casting a warm glow on the worn furniture. "Mom," he called out, his voice still thick with sleep. "You up?" "In here, honey." Monica's voice drifted from her bedroom. Ryan shuffled to the doorway, leaning against the frame. Monica was already dressed, sitting in her wheelchair by the window. She turned to face him, a gentle smile on her face. "Good morning, sleepyhead," she said. "You were tossing and turning all night. Everything okay?" Ryan nodded, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "Yeah, just work stuff. Nothing to worry about." Monica's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't press further. "Well, I made you some coffee. It's in the kitchen." Surprised, Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You didn't have to do that, Mom. I could have managed." "I'm in a wheelchair, Ryan, not helpless." Monica chuckled. "Go on, drink up before it gets cold." As Ryan sipped his coffee in the kitchen, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. His mother seemed different, more energetic perhaps. He shook his head, attributing it to his own exhaustion. The morning routine unfolded as usual. Ryan helped Monica with her exercises, prepared breakfast, and made sure she had everything she needed for the day. As he was about to leave for work, Monica called out to him, "Ryan, sweetie, could you pick up my prescription from the pharmacy on your way home? I'm running low on my pain meds." "Sure, Mom, no problem," Ryan replied, grabbing his keys. "Anything else you need?" Monica hesitated for a moment, then shook her head. "No, that's all. Have a good day at work, honey." Ryan leaned down to kiss her cheek before heading out. As he closed the door behind him, he missed the flash of guilt that crossed Monica's face. At work, Ryan found himself distracted. He fumbled through customer calls, his mind wandering to his mother. Was she really okay being alone all day? Should he look into home care services? But they could barely afford their current lifestyle, let alone additional help. During his lunch break, Ryan scrolled through his social media feed. Photos of his old high school friends at parties, on vacations, or celebrating job promotions filled the screen. A pang of envy shot through him, quickly followed by shame. He loved his mother. How could he be so selfish? As he was about to put his phone away, a message popped up. It was from his old friend Mike. "Hey man, long time no see. A bunch of us are getting together this weekend. Want to join?" Ryan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to say yes, to reconnect with his old life, if only for a night, but then he thought of his mother, alone in the apartment. He typed out a quick reply. "Sorry, can't make it. Maybe next time." The rest of the workday dragged on. By the time Ryan left the office, the sun was already setting. He stopped by the pharmacy, picking up Monica's prescription. As he waited in line, he overheard two elderly women gossiping. "Did you see that fancy car outside the Ritz-Carlton yesterday?" one woman said. "I swear I recognize the woman getting out. Isn't she that shut-in from your building?" Ryan's ears perked up, but before he could hear more, the pharmacist called his name. He collected the medication, his mind buzzing with questions. Could they have been talking about his mother? No, that was impossible. Monica hadn't left the apartment in years, let alone gone to a luxury hotel. As Ryan walked home, the conversation at the pharmacy nagged at him. He tried to push it out of his mind, focusing instead on what he'd make for dinner. But a seed of doubt had been planted, one that would soon grow into something he couldn't ignore. Climbing the stairs to their apartment, Ryan took a deep breath, steeling himself for another evening of caregiving. He loved his mother, he reminded himself. This was where he needed to be. As he opened the door, Monica's warm voice greeted him, same as always. Yet for the first time, Ryan found himself wondering if there was more to his mother's story than he knew. The next few days passed in a blur of routine for Ryan. Wake up, help Monica with her morning routine, go to work, come home, take care of the apartment, sleep, repeat. But the overheard conversation at the pharmacy lingered in the back of his mind, an itch he couldn't quite scratch. On Friday evening, Ryan returned home later than usual. He'd stayed back at work to finish a project, hoping the extra effort might lead to a promotion. As he approached their apartment door, he heard muffled voices from inside. Pausing, he pressed his ear against the worn wood. Can't keep this up forever, Monica, a unfamiliar male voice said. I know, his mother replied, her tone hushed but firm. Just a little longer. Please. Ryan's hand froze on the doorknob. Who was she talking to? And what were they talking about? He took a deep breath and entered the apartment. The living room fell silent as he walked in. Monica sat in her usual spot by the window, but her cheeks were flushed, and she looked nervous. There was no sign of anyone else in the room. Hey, Mom, Ryan said, trying to keep his voice casual. Everything okay? Monica smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course, honey. Just talking to Mrs. Rodriguez on the phone. How was work? Ryan nodded, not entirely convinced. It was fine. Busy day. He glanced around the room, half expecting to see someone hiding behind the curtains. I'm going to grab a shower, then I'll start on dinner. In the bathroom, Ryan leaned against the sink, staring at his reflection in the mirror. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and stubble peppered his jaw. When had he started looking so old? He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. Maybe he was just being paranoid. The stress of work and caregiving was probably getting to him. After dinner, as Ryan was washing the dishes, Monica wheeled up beside him. Ryan, sweetie, she began, her voice hesitant. I was thinking, why don't you go out tomorrow night? You deserve some time for yourself. Ryan nearly dropped the plate he was drying. What? But Mom, who would take care of you? Monica waved her hand dismissively. I'll be fine for one evening. Mrs. Rodriguez said she'd check in on me. Please, Ryan, it would make me happy to know you're enjoying yourself. Ryan studied his mother's face. There was something in her eyes he couldn't quite read. Eagerness, relief. He wanted to refuse, to stick to their usual routine, but a part of him yearned for a break. Well, I guess I could call Mike, he said slowly. See if he's free. Monica's face lit up. That's wonderful, honey. You go and have fun. Don't worry about me at all. The next evening, Ryan found himself standing outside a bustling bar, feeling out of place in his best shirt and jeans. Inside, the noise hit him like a wall. Music, laughter, the clinking of glasses. He spotted Mike at a table with a group of familiar faces. Ryan! Man, it's been forever! Mike exclaimed, pulling him into a bear hug. Guys, look who finally decided to join the land of the living. As the night wore on, Ryan found himself relaxing, laughing at old jokes and catching up on years of missed stories. But every so often, his thoughts would drift back to his mother. Was she really okay on her own? Around midnight, Ryan stepped outside to get some air. As he leaned against the building, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your mother isn't who you think she is. Corner of 5th and Main, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone if you want the truth. Ryan stared at the message, his heart pounding. Who could have sent this? And what did they mean about his mother? He was tempted to dismiss it as a prank, but something told him this was important. As he rejoined his friends inside, Ryan's mind raced with possibilities. He'd spent years devoted to caring for his mother, sacrificing his own dreams and ambitions. The thought that there might be more to her story both terrified and intrigued him. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., he decided, he would go to 5th and Main. Whatever the truth was, he needed to know. As the night wound down and he said goodbye to his friends, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change dramatically. The next morning, Ryan woke with a mixture of anticipation and dread churning in his stomach. He glanced at the clock. 9:30 a.m. 4.5 hours until the mysterious meeting. He found Monica in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred a pot of oatmeal. Morning, Mom, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. How was your night? Monica turned, her smile warm but somehow different. Just fine, honey. Mrs. Rodriguez stopped by with some magazines. How was your evening out? Ryan poured himself a cup of coffee, buying time to compose his thoughts. It was nice. Caught up with Mike and the old gang. That's wonderful, sweetie. You should go out more often." As they ate breakfast, Ryan couldn't help but study his mother's face. Were there new lines around her eyes? A tension in her shoulders he'd never noticed before? Or was he just seeing what he wanted to see, fueled by that cryptic text message? "I've got some errands to run this afternoon," Ryan said casually as he cleared the dishes. "Will you be okay on your own for a few hours?" Monica's eyes flickered with an emotion Ryan couldn't quite place. "Of course, dear. Don't worry about me." At 1:45 p.m., Ryan found himself standing on the corner of 5th and Main, his heart racing. The bustling street was filled with the usual Saturday afternoon crowd: shoppers, families, tourists snapping photos. He scanned faces, wondering who might approach him. At precisely 2 p.m., a man in a crisp suit stepped up beside him. "Ryan Thompson?" the man asked, his voice low. Ryan nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. "Follow me," the man said, turning on his heel and walking briskly down the street. They entered a small, nondescript cafe. The man led Ryan to a corner booth where a woman sat, her back to them. As they approached, she turned, and Ryan's world tilted on its axis. It was his mother, Monica, standing, walking. "Mom," Ryan whispered, his voice cracking. "What? How?" Monica's eyes were filled with tears as she gestured for him to sit. "Ryan, honey, I'm so sorry. I know you must have 1,000 questions." Ryan sank into the booth, his mind reeling. "You can walk? All this time? It was a lie?" Monica reached across the table, but Ryan pulled his hands away. The suited man discreetly moved to a nearby table, giving them privacy while remaining within earshot. "It's complicated, Ryan," Monica began, her voice trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. Everything I did to protect you." "Protect me?" Ryan's voice rose, drawing curious glances from other patrons. He lowered it to a harsh whisper. "Protect me from what? The truth? Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed for you?" Monica flinched as if he'd struck her. "I know, and I'm more grateful than you can imagine. But there's so much you don't understand. About our past, about who we really are." Ryan's head spun. "Who we really are? Mom? What are you talking about?" Monica took a deep breath. "Ryan, I'm not your biological mother." The words hit Ryan like a physical blow. He gripped the edge of the table, feeling as if the floor might drop out from beneath him at any moment. "What?" he managed to choke out. "Your real parents, they were in danger. They asked me to take you, to keep you safe. The wheelchair, the shut-in life, it was all part of our cover." Ryan shook his head, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. "Danger? From who? And who are you, really?" Monica, or whoever she was, glanced at the suited man, who gave a slight nod. "I was an agent," she said softly. "Your parents were involved in something big, something dangerous. They knew too much. When they realized they were targeted, they reached out to my agency for help." Ryan's mind raced, trying to reconcile the woman before him with the mother he thought he knew. "So everything, our whole life together, it was all fake?" Tears spilled down Monica's cheeks. "No, Ryan, the love was real. Every moment we shared, every sacrifice I made for you, it was all real. I may not have given birth to you, but you are my son in every way that matters." Ryan stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need some air. I can't process this right now." As he stumbled out of the cafe, his head spinning, Ryan heard Monica call after him. But he couldn't turn back. Not yet. He needed time to think, to try and make sense of a world that had suddenly turned upside down. The busy streets swallowed him up as he walked aimlessly, his mind a whirlwind of questions and doubts. Who was he really? And what dangers from the past were now catching up to them? Ryan wandered the city streets, his mind a tumultuous whirlpool of emotions and fragmented thoughts. The bustling sidewalks and honking cars faded into a distant buzz, as he grappled with the earth-shattering revelations. Hours passed, the sun dipping low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the urban landscape. As twilight settled over the city, Ryan found himself in a small park. He collapsed onto a bench, physically and emotionally drained. The events of the day played on a loop in his head. Monica walking, the suited man, the unbelievable story of danger and deception. It all seemed like a plot from some far-fetched thriller novel, not his life. His phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. Ryan pulled it out to find a barrage of missed calls and messages from Monica. His thumb hovered over the screen, torn between the urge to demand more answers and the desire to retreat further into solitude. Finally, he opened a text. "Ryan, please come home. We need to talk. It's not safe out there." A chill ran down his spine. Not safe? What did that mean? Despite his anger and confusion, concern for the woman he'd always known as his mother won out. He stood hailing a taxi to take him back to their apartment. The ride home was a blur. Ryan's mind raced with questions. If Monica wasn't his mother, who were his real parents? What kind of danger were they in? And why had this charade continued for so many years? As the taxi pulled up to his building, Ryan noticed a sleek black car parked across the street. The same suited man from the cafe sat behind the wheel, eyes alert and scanning the area. Ryan's heartbeat quickened as he realized this was no ordinary family drama. There were larger forces at play. He took the stairs two at a time, a mixture of adrenaline and trepidation fueling his ascent. Outside the apartment door, he paused, taking a deep breath to steel himself for whatever awaited him inside. The apartment was dim when he entered, lit only by a single lamp in the living room. Monica sat on the couch, her wheelchair nowhere in sight. She looked up as Ryan entered, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. "Ryan," she breathed, relief evident in her voice. "I was so worried." Ryan remained standing, arms crossed. "I think you owe me some answers," he said, his voice low and controlled despite the storm of emotions within him. Monica nodded, gesturing for him to sit. "You're right. I'll tell you everything." As Ryan lowered himself into an armchair, Monica began her story. "Your parents were scientists," she explained. "Brilliant minds working on a project that could change the world. But their research attracted the wrong kind of attention." "What kind of research?" Ryan interrupted. Monica shook her head. "I don't know the details. It was safer that way. But I do know it was groundbreaking and dangerous in the wrong hands." She went on to describe how Ryan's parents had reached out to her agency when they realized they were being hunted. "They knew they couldn't keep you safe," Monica said softly. "So they made the hardest decision a parent could make. They gave you up to protect you." Ryan's mind reeled. "But why the wheelchair? Why pretend to be disabled for all these years?" "It was the perfect cover," Monica explained. "A shut-in mother and her devoted son. We were practically invisible. No one would suspect us of being anything other than what we appeared to be." As Monica continued to unravel the complex web of their past, Ryan found his anger slowly giving way to a mix of confusion and grudging understanding. The life he'd known had been a carefully constructed illusion, but the love and care behind it were real. "So what's changed?" Ryan asked finally. "Why reveal all this now?" Monica's expression grew grave. "Because the people who were after your parents have resurfaced. They've never stopped looking for their research, and now they might be closing in on us." The weight of her words settled heavily in the room. Ryan's mind flashed to the suited man in the car outside, the cryptic warnings about safety. This wasn't just about uncovering the truth of his past. Their lives might genuinely be in danger. "What do we do now?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Monica reached out, taking his hand in hers. Despite everything, her touch was familiar, comforting. "We have to leave, Ryan. Tonight, it's not safe here anymore." As the reality of their situation sank in, Ryan realized that the life he'd known, however complicated and built on secrets it might have been, was about to change irrevocably. Whatever came next, there was no going back. "Okay," he said finally, squeezing Monica's hand. "Let's go." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of hushed activity. Ryan and Monica moved through the apartment with practiced efficiency, packing only the essentials. The familiarity of their movements stood in stark contrast to the surreal nature of their situation. "Pack light," Monica instructed, her voice low and urgent. "Only what we absolutely need." Ryan nodded, stuffing clothes into a duffel bag. His mind raced with questions, but he forced himself to focus on the task at hand. There would be time for answers later, if they made it out safely. As Ryan zipped up his bag, a soft knock at the door made them both freeze. Monica's eyes widened in alarm, but then relaxed as a rhythmic pattern followed. She moved swiftly to the door, opening it to reveal the suited man from earlier. "We need to move," he said without preamble. "There's been activity in the area." Monica nodded, grabbing her own small suitcase. "We're ready, David." Ryan's head snapped up at the name. David. So the mysterious man had a name. It made everything feel more real somehow. David's eyes scanned the apartment efficiently. "Good. Car's waiting out back. We'll take the service elevator." As they made their way down the rarely used back stairs, Ryan couldn't help but marvel at how different Monica, or whoever she really was, seemed now. Gone was the frail, dependent woman he'd devoted years to caring for. In her place was someone confident, alert, and clearly accustomed to high-pressure situations. They emerged into the alley behind the building, where a nondescript sedan waited. David ushered them into the back seat, then slid behind the wheel. As they pulled away from the curb, Ryan caught a glimpse of their apartment building receding in the side mirror. It struck him that he might never see it again. "Where are we going?" Ryan asked, breaking the tense silence in the car. David's eyes met his in the rearview mirror. "Safe house, for now. We'll decide our next move once we're secure." The city lights blurred past as David navigated through the late-night traffic with practiced ease. Ryan noticed how he took seemingly random turns, doubling back occasionally, always watching for any signs of pursuit. After what felt like hours but was probably only 45 minutes, they pulled into the underground parking lot of a modern apartment complex. David led them to an elevator, inputting a complex series of numbers on the keypad. The safe house turned out to be a sparsely furnished apartment on the top floor. As soon as the door closed behind them, David began setting up what looked like sophisticated surveillance equipment. Monica turned to Ryan, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "I know you must have a million questions, honey. I promise I'll answer everything I can." Ryan sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling the weight of the day's events. "I don't even know where to start," he admitted. "Who are you, really? What's your real name?" Monica, or whoever she was, sat beside him, her posture straight but her eyes soft. "My real name is Emily Carter. I was a deep cover operative for a classified government agency. Your parents were my last assignment before I was supposed to retire." Ryan absorbed this, trying to reconcile the woman beside him with the mother he thought he knew. "And my real parents? Are they?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know, Ryan. They went off the grid after handing you over to me. It was safer for everyone that way." "Safer from what?" Ryan pressed. "What exactly were they working on that was so dangerous?" Emily exchanged a glance with David, who had finished setting up and joined them. "It's complicated," David said. "Your parents were part of a team developing a new form of clean energy, something that could potentially solve the world's energy crisis overnight. But in the wrong hands," Emily continued, "the technology could also be weaponized. There were certain groups who wanted to exploit it. Your parents refused to hand over their research, so they became targets." Ryan's head spun with the implications. His entire life had been shaped by events he'd known nothing about, by dangers he couldn't have imagined. "So what's changed now?" he asked. "Why are we suddenly in danger again, after all these years?" David's expression grew grim. Because someone's picked up the trail. We don't know who yet, but they're getting close. Too close. As the gravity of the situation settled over him, Ryan realized that the life he'd known, the simple, if challenging, existence of caring for his disabled mother, was gone forever. In its place was a world of shadows, secrets, and ever-present danger. "What happens now?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily reached out, taking his hand in hers. Despite everything, her touch was still comforting, familiar. "Now, we keep you safe, and maybe, just maybe, we find a way to finish what your parents started." As dawn broke over the city, casting long shadows through the safe house windows, Ryan knew that his journey was only just beginning. Whatever lay ahead, nothing would ever be the same again. The next few days passed in a blur of new information and heightened vigilance. Ryan found himself in a crash course on covert operations, with Emily and David as his instructors. They taught him basic surveillance techniques, how to spot a tail, and the importance of maintaining a cover identity. "Always be aware of your surroundings," David emphasized one afternoon as they sat around the safe house's small dining table. "Notice details, but don't look like you're noticing them." Ryan nodded, trying to absorb everything. It was surreal, learning these skills from the man he'd only known as a mysterious suited figure days ago. Now, David was becoming something of a mentor, patient but firm in his teachings. Emily, for her part, seemed to be rediscovering herself. Gone was the facade of a frail, dependent woman. In its place was a sharp, resourceful individual who could hold her own in any situation. Ryan found himself in awe of her transformation, even as he struggled to reconcile this new reality with his memories. Emily, Ryan began one evening as they prepared a simple dinner. "Can you tell me more about my real parents? What were they like?" Emily's hands stilled over the cutting board, a wistful expression crossing her face. "They were brilliant, Ryan. Your father had a mind like a steel trap, could see connections where others saw only chaos. And your mother, she had this infectious enthusiasm for her work. When she talked about their research, her eyes would light up like she held the secrets of the universe." Ryan absorbed this, trying to picture these strangers who had given him life. "Do you think they're still out there somewhere?" Emily sighed, resuming her chopping. "I honestly don't know. Part of me hopes they are, that they've been in hiding all this time, working on completing their research. But another part..." She trailed off, but Ryan understood. The possibility that his biological parents might not have survived these past years hung unspoken between them. As the days wore on, Ryan found himself growing restless. The safe house, while secure, felt like a gilded cage. He missed the simple routines of his old life: work, caring for who he thought was his mother, even the creaky stairs of their old apartment building. On the fifth day, David returned from one of his mysterious outings with a grim expression. "We've got movement," he announced, setting up his laptop on the coffee table. "One of our surveillance algorithms picked up chatter about a prodigal son in connection with the old project codename." Emily's face paled. "They know about Ryan?" David nodded solemnly. "It seems so, which means we need to move. Now." A flurry of activity ensued. Ryan watched in amazement as Emily and David dismantled their temporary home with practiced efficiency, leaving no trace of their presence. Within an hour, they were in a different car, heading out of the city. As buildings gave way to suburbs and then to open countryside, Ryan found his mind wandering. He thought about his co-workers at the call center, probably wondering why he hadn't shown up for days. He thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, their kindly neighbor who had often checked in on them. All those connections, those small threads of his old life, were now severed. "Where are we going?" Ryan asked, breaking the tense silence in the car. David, at the wheel, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "We're meeting a contact, someone who might have information about your parents' research." Emily turned in her seat to face Ryan. "This contact, he's an old colleague of your parents. He's been off the grid for years. But if anyone knows where they might be, or what happened to their work, it's him. Ryan nodded, a mix of anticipation and apprehension churning in his stomach. Every step forward seemed to unravel more of the mystery surrounding his past, but it also brought new dangers and uncertainties. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in vibrant oranges and pinks, Ryan found himself thinking about identity. Who was he really? The devoted son who had sacrificed his youth to care for his mother? The unwitting pawn in a decades-long game of cat and mouse? Or something else entirely? A blank slate ready to be rewritten? The car sped on into the gathering darkness, carrying Ryan towards the answers he both craved and feared. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that the journey was far from over. In fact, it felt like it was only just beginning. The car wound its way through narrow country roads, the headlights cutting through the darkness. Ryan dozed fitfully in the back seat, his dreams a jumble of fragmented memories and new, unsettling realities. He woke with a start as the car came to a stop. "We're here," David announced quietly. Ryan rubbed his eyes, peering out the window. They were parked in front of a small, weathered cabin nestled in a clearing. The surrounding woods loomed dark and imposing in the pre-dawn light. Emily turned to Ryan, her expression a mix of anticipation and concern. "Ryan, honey, I need you to listen carefully. The man we're about to meet, he's unpredictable, brilliant, but paranoid. Let David and me do the talking, okay?" Ryan nodded, his throat suddenly dry. As they approached the cabin, he noticed subtle security measures, cameras disguised as birdhouses, motion sensors hidden in overgrown shrubs. This was no ordinary woodland retreat. David knocked on the door in a specific pattern. Moments later, it creaked open, revealing a man who seemed to embody the essence of an eccentric genius. Wild gray hair stuck out at odd angles, and piercing blue eyes peered at them from behind thick glasses. "Emily," the man said, his voice gravelly from disuse. "It's been a long time." "Hello, Dr. Reeves," Emily replied. "Thank you for agreeing to see us." Dr. Reeves's gaze shifted to Ryan, his eyes widening slightly. "My God," he whispered. "You're the spitting image of your father." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. This man knew his real parents. The realization hit him like a physical force. Once inside, Dr. Reeves ushered them into a cluttered living room. Every surface was covered with books, papers, and strange-looking gadgets. He cleared a space on the couch, gesturing for them to sit. "I assume this isn't a social call," Dr. Reeves said, settling into a worn armchair. David leaned forward, his posture tense. "We need information, Doctor, about the project and about Ryan's parents." Dr. Reeves sighed heavily, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. "I was afraid of this. They're getting close, aren't they?" Emily nodded grimly. "Too close. We need to know what happened after Ryan was given to me." For the next hour, Dr. Reeves spoke in hushed tones about the project, a revolutionary energy source that could power entire cities with minimal environmental impact. Ryan listened, spellbound, as the doctor described the potential applications, from ending global energy crises to powering interstellar travel. "Your parents were on the verge of a breakthrough," Dr. Reeves told Ryan, his eyes shining with remembered excitement. But then, the attacks started. Corporate spies, government agents, even eco-terrorists. Everyone wanted the technology for their own purposes. "What happened to them?" Ryan asked, unable to contain himself any longer. Dr. Reeves's expression softened. "They went into hiding. The last I heard from them was about 5 years ago. They said they were close to completing the work, but needed to stay off the grid to protect it. And you." Ryan's mind reeled. His parents were alive. They'd been out there all this time, working in secret, thinking of him. A mix of emotions washed over him. Relief, anger, longing. "Do you know where they are now?" Emily pressed. Dr. Reeves shook his head. "I'm sorry, I don't, but..." He hesitated, glancing at Ryan. "There might be a way to find them. Your parents left a failsafe. a way to contact them if it was ever absolutely necessary. He stood moving to a cluttered bookshelf. After a moment of searching, he pulled out an old leather-bound book. From its pages, he extracted a small metallic object that looked like a cross between a USB drive and a key. "This contains encrypted coordinates," Dr. Reeves explained, handing it to Ryan. "It's keyed to your DNA. Only you can activate it." Ryan stared at the small device in his palm, feeling the weight of its significance. This was his link to his past, to the parents he'd never known. "Be warned," Dr. Reeves added, his tone grave. "Once activated, it'll send out a signal, one that others might be able to trace. You'll have to move fast." As dawn broke outside, painting the sky in soft pinks and golds, Ryan felt a shift within himself. The confusion and anger of the past few days crystallized into determination. He had a purpose now, a mission. "What do we do next?" he asked, looking at Emily and David. Emily smiled, a hint of pride in her eyes. "We find your parents, Ryan, and we finish what they started." As they prepared to leave, Ryan took one last look at the small device in his hand. It represented so much: his past, his future, and the key to unlocking a technology that could change the world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he was ready to face them. The journey to uncover the truth about his family and their groundbreaking work was just beginning. As the sound of approaching vehicles grew louder, the group sprang into action. James and Lydia gathered their most crucial research materials, while David and Emily prepared their defenses. Ryan found himself at the center of it all, coordinating their efforts with a clarity of purpose he'd never experienced before. "We need to secure the prototype," James said urgently, gesturing to a small, pulsing device on a nearby workbench. "It's not stable yet, but it's the key to everything." Ryan nodded, carefully picking up the prototype. It hummed with energy in his hands, warm to the touch. He couldn't help but marvel at the potential contained within such a small object. Lydia approached him, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. "Ryan, there's something you need to know. The prototype. It's keyed to our family's DNA. That's why they've been searching for you all these years. You're the missing piece." The weight of this revelation settled on Ryan's shoulders. He was more than just a son reuniting with his parents. He was an integral part of their life's work. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil of emotions inside him. Before Lydia could answer, David's voice cut through the tension. "They're here. At least 3 vehicles, heavily armed." Emily moved to the window, peering out cautiously. "I recognize some of them. Corporate mercenaries, probably hired by one of the energy conglomerates. They're not here to negotiate." James turned to Ryan, his expression grave. "Son, we don't have much time. The prototype needs a final sequencing to stabilize the energy output. With your DNA, we can complete the process and ensure it can only be used for its intended purpose." Ryan nodded, a sense of destiny settling over him. "Tell me what to do." As James quickly explained the procedure, Emily and David set up defensive positions around the cabin. The sound of car doors slamming and voices shouting orders filtered through the walls. "Whatever happens," Lydia said, squeezing Ryan's hand, "know that we love you. We've missed so much of your life, but we're so proud of the man you've become." Ryan felt a lump form in his throat. After years of believing he was alone in the world, save for his adoptive mother, he now stood with his real parents, facing a threat that could change the course of history. "I understand now," he said softly, "why you had to give me up, and I'm ready to help finish what you started." A loud bang on the cabin door interrupted the moment. "Dr. Thompson," a gruff voice called out. "We know you're in there. Come out peacefully and turn over your research." David positioned himself near the door, weapon at the ready. "We need to buy time," he said. "How long will the sequencing take?" 10 minutes, James replied, already setting up the necessary equipment. "Maybe less if everything goes smoothly." Emily joined David at the door. "We'll hold them off," "Ryan, stay with your parents and complete the process. It's our only chance." As Ryan placed his hand on the scanner, beginning the DNA sequencing, the first shots rang out. The cabin's reinforced walls held, but the sound was deafening. He could hear Emily and David returning fire, their shouts mixing with the chaos outside. The prototype hummed louder, its glow intensifying as it integrated Ryan's DNA. James and Lydia worked feverishly, making adjustments and monitoring the process. Despite the danger surrounding them, Ryan felt a sense of calm. For the first time in his life, he knew exactly where he belonged and what he was meant to do. "It's working!" Lydia exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement as she watched the readings on her screen. "The energy signature is stabilizing." Just then, a louder explosion rocked the cabin. The door splintered and smoke began to fill the room. David's voice called out, strained but determined, "We can't hold them much longer." Ryan looked at the prototype, now pulsing with a steady, brilliant light. They were so close, but time was running out. As shouts and footsteps drew nearer, he realized that the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of the entire world. With the prototype nearing completion and danger closing in from all sides, Ryan steeled himself for whatever came next. The final confrontation was at hand, and the outcome would hinge on his next move. The prototype's glow intensified, bathing the room in an otherworldly light. Ryan stood at the center of it all, his hand still on the scanner, feeling the device pulse in sync with his own heartbeat. The shouts and gunfire outside grew louder, but inside the cabin, time seemed to slow. "It's done!" James exclaimed, his eyes wide with a mixture of relief and awe. "The sequencing is complete." As if on cue, the cabin door burst open. Smoke billowed in, followed by armed men in tactical gear. Emily and David stood their ground, weapons raised, creating a human barrier between the intruders and the Thompsons. "Stop right there!" the lead mercenary shouted. "Hand over the device and no one gets hurt." Ryan looked at his parents, then at Emily and David. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. With a deep breath, he picked up the now stabilized prototype. "You want this?" Ryan called out, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Then you need to listen carefully." The room fell silent, all eyes on Ryan. Even the mercenaries paused, caught off guard by his boldness. Ryan held up the glowing prototype. "This device, it's not a weapon. It's the key to clean, unlimited energy for everyone. But it only works with my DNA. Without me, it's useless to you." The lead mercenary's eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Ryan challenged. "Are you willing to risk it? To explain to your employers that you destroyed the very thing they sent you to retrieve?" A tense silence fell over the room. Ryan could see the uncertainty in the mercenary's eyes. He pressed on. "We're going to walk out of here. All of us. And then we're going to show the world what this technology can do. No more energy crises. No more wars over resources. A chance to heal our planet." For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, the lead mercenary lowered his weapon. "Stand down," he ordered his team, his voice gruff but resigned. As they filed out of the cabin, Ryan felt a mix of relief and disbelief. Had they really just talked their way out of a firefight? But he knew the real challenge was just beginning. In the days that followed, the Thompsons, along with Emily and David, worked tirelessly to prepare their research for public release. They reached out to trusted scientific institutions and environmental organizations, ensuring that the technology would be used for its intended purpose. The unveiling of the new energy source sent shockwaves through the world. At first, there was skepticism, then amazement, and finally, hope. Governments and corporations scrambled to adapt to the new reality, while grassroots movements sprang up to ensure equitable distribution of the technology. Ryan found himself at the center of it all, not just as the key to the device, but as a symbol of what could be achieved when knowledge was used for the greater good. He spoke at conferences, met with world leaders, and worked alongside his parents to refine and improve the technology. Months later, as Ryan stood on a stage with his parents, accepting a prestigious award for their contribution to humanity. He caught Emily's eye in the audience. She smiled proudly, and Ryan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. She may not have been his biological mother, but she had shaped him into the person he was today. As the applause died down, Ryan stepped up to the microphone. "This award doesn't just belong to us," he said, gesturing to his parents. "It belongs to everyone who dreams of a better world and is willing to fight for it. We've been given a second chance, as a family and as a global community. Let's make the most of it." Later that night, as Ryan looked out over the city skyline, now illuminated by the clean, sustainable energy they had created, he reflected on his journey, from a life of sacrifice and deception to one of purpose and hope. He had found his true family, uncovered his destiny, and in the process, helped change the world. As he turned back to join his parents, Emily and David, his unlikely but perfect family, Ryan knew that while one chapter of his life had closed, an even more exciting one was just beginning. The future was bright, powered by clean energy and the unbreakable bonds of love and trust they had forged together. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Now, how about another one? To watch another nice story, just click on the video appearing on your screen.